Hi, everyone. This is Madison again, and welcome again to Small Bima Big Torah, a channel about practical leadership for small Jewish communities. Today, I want to talk about a question that many congregations face this time every year as Passover approaches. Should the congregation host a community Seder? I've served and joined in large congregations, small congregations, and specialized communities like military settings. One thing I've noticed is that the answer to that question often depends on something very simple, the size of the community. Large communities often don't hold seders. In larger congregations, it's actually very common not to hold the community seder. It makes sense when you have a building that needs to be koshered for Passover. That can be a big feat. Also, the cost and the expense of holding a Seder for a large 400 or 600 person Seder is huge. It also tends to look a lot different. So the decision for large communities not to hold Seders makes a lot of sense. They bring in hundreds of people also together regularly. The congregation sees a lot of the people week after week. So for large congregations, the real value comes from smaller seders where families and friends gather in more intimate groups, and those smaller intimate groups are able to help then knit the congregation together in a way that it doesn't have when 200 people are at a Saturday Shabbat service or 750 show up for Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. Those smaller gatherings create the personal conversation that the Passover Seder is designed to encourage. So larger communities, the goal is to break the community into smaller circles to make those personal connections every year. It's part of their growth strategy in meeting people. But small communities are different. Small communities, I'm going to say that every time, function differently, very differently. And you know that, otherwise there'd be no need for you to listen to this video. In small communities, people already know about each other fairly well. They may not be intimately knowledgeable about but they see each other at services. They have more conversations. There's less people to interact with. So you tend to know those people more in the everyday life of the community. But something special happens when everyone gathers together at the same time. The community Seder can be one of the few moments in the year when nearly the entire congregation is in the room together. And that could be 50 people, that could be 60 people, maybe yours is a little bigger, and that could be 100 people. But the experience is very powerful. For one evening or two evenings, depending on how you do your Seders, the community feels bigger, warmer, and deeply connected. We're talking about building mishpacha. We know mishpacha means family in Jewish, in Hebrew, and small congregations sometimes describe themselves as mishpacha or havrata, however you want, whatever words you want to use. We're always looking for ways to make sure that people know that we're intimately connected in small communities. But sometimes the communities need moments that actually create those feelings, because when people go to services in small communities, it's not sometimes it's the same people every week, but sometimes it's a small group of people. Maybe you have 50 families, but maybe every week you only get 10 to 15 families. So it's not that people seeing the same people every week. So these communities need moments that create that feeling of mishpacha. You just can't say it that, oh, we are a mishpacha, if you can't at least a few times a year create that feeling. When everyone gathers around the same tables and they're telling the same story and they're singing the same songs and they're sharing the same meal, it reinforces the sense that the congregation is really one community. And sometimes it even feels like one big, slightly chaotic Jewish family. And that isn't a bad thing. One of the challenges that this community Seder answers in small communities is, how do we get the generations connected? Intergenerational connectedness, transferring from the older generation to the new generation, is a big problem. The generations just don't mix. The younger people and the older members don't always interact as much as we hope. You maybe get all your older people on Friday and your younger people on Saturdays, or maybe it's all older people until the holiday, and then it's younger people. Every community is built differently. Maybe it's all older people unless you have a special service or something that applies to families like Purim, and then you get the younger people. Every small community is unique. But the congregational Seder can create natural moments for those relationships to form. The younger person may end up sitting next to someone who has been in the community for decades. You may have Holocaust survivors talking to young people. You may have retired teachers talking to people. Military people who have served in the military talking with parents, older parents sharing things with younger parents, single people who would like to talk to a older type person because maybe they don't have parents anymore. A younger person may end up sitting next to someone who never realized that this person has been in the community for decades and knows all the history of the community. You never know what children may tell the older people that encourage their hearts, and the vice versa. Sometimes those simple conversations become meaningful connections that continue long after the holidays. And I have two really super quick stories. During some of the Seders, I've had some young people talk to older people about what it was like to be in school for them today, not knowing that they actually were talking to someone who used to be a teacher. And so a bond was formed, and when that student became a bat mitzvah, that older person never forgot about them and gave them a really meaningful gift, because that bond had been formed. Vice versa. I've had people sit in a congregation and hear a person talk about something that happened in history that maybe that person had just only heard in a textbook, or telling them something that they couldn't believe how fascinating it was. So it's very exciting to know that this mixing can bring out all sorts of wonderful results. So you never know who needs it as well. And when I mean that, we are becoming a society of loneliness. It is just a psychological fact. It has nothing to do with the fact that we're Jewish or not Jewish. Everybody has been spending more time online, more time with media, and less time with people. I don't care who you are, unless you're a hermit in the middle of the woods in a mountaintop someplace, chances are that you have been spending more time with yourself than you have with other people. So we do not know who is fully lonely, who needs support and companionship. It might be someone in the older in the congregation, some of the seniors. In fact, senior depression is one of the largest group of people who are getting depression. It may be someone younger who feels all alone. We don't know who that person will be. It could be someone in midlife who isn't married and doesn't have a significant other. And people assume because they're young, they're going out and doing things, and they need that connection. So a congregational Seder ensures that no one in the community has to face Passover completely alone. And that alone can make what may seem like a Herculean effort sometimes worthwhile. The real challenge is logistics. Of course, holding a community Seder comes with real challenges. In small congregations, the logistics often fall on a small number of people. Sometimes it's the rabbi, the service leader, a handful of volunteers doing a great deal of work to make the evening possible. Planning the food, organizing the space, preparing the Haggadah, coordinating volunteers. It's not a small task. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that leading Seders, especially when I tend to do a traditional night on night one, I tend to do a family night on night two, and people can mix and match and go to anyone that they're comfortable with. However, I can tell you that I am absolutely exhausted after 2 or 3 days of koshering and prepping the place where we eat. And I order food catered. So it just has to normally be reheated or assembled, or I have to only make a few extra things. But nevertheless, then I need to lead the Seder. So it's an exhausting experience. But many communities and I still choose to do it because of what it creates and the unity and the actual feeling of mishpacha that we can point to a couple times a year, Passover, sometimes high holy holidays. That community is valuable. For small congregations, a community Seder can be about much more than the meal itself. It's about bringing the entire community together in one room, getting people to remember the fun parts about people that they don't see that often, getting the people that don't come that often to remember why they came in the first place, and sharing the story of Exodus, strengthening the relationships that can sustain us through the new year. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur comes, we kind of get this encouragement of our people in our community to kind of do some things. And then by the time Passover comes, that's waning a bit. We've made it through the winter, but now they're looking forward to vacations and summer. But we can maybe get them hooked in a little bit more. Well, and when it works well, it reminds everyone that the congregation is a family. It is a type of mishpacha. And sometimes bringing everyone together around the table is exactly what these small communities need. So I want to tell you that I really hope that if you were a small community and you're trying to figure out where to put your time, to seriously consider if you need a way to get your family, your mishpacha, your community to feel connected, to seriously consider hosting a community Seder. It doesn't have to be fancy. In fact, I had one person tell me a long time ago that you could have a Seder with potato chips and Oreos if you had to, albeit this was a military rabbi. And I've had people tell me in World War II that they've had Seders with celery and carrots. That's all they could sneak. So what you have at the Seder means less about the community that you build around the Seder. So thank you for being part of Small Bima Big Torah. This is Madison. And just remember, I may have a small bima, but I carry a big Torah.